Hello, everyone. This is Coach Clayton, and this is a Women's Empowerment Interview episode. And today we have Laura as our guest, and she is going to discuss her journey of overcoming personal and professional obstacles in her life. Welcome, Laura.
Hello. It's so lovely to see you.
Yes, it is. Laura, I just want to say again, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day to chat with me. I really, really appreciate it.
And thank you so much for having me. I'm actually getting out of bedtime, so it's like brilliant for me.
I love it. Laura, I'm an accountability coach, and I created this video podcast just for a way to inspire women, somewhere where they can go to each week just to get inspired, because there's so much going on in this world, Yep. Yeah. So your background really intrigued me, Laura, and let's just dive in. Tell us about yourself. Tell us about one of the biggest obstacles that you had to overcome, and what were some of the ways that you overcame those obstacles.
Yeah, there's been a few. Actually, before I forget, it's Laura. Just so it's not that I write, just so you it's Laura. And there's been a few little obstacles, I guess, a few little ones and a few big ones, and I guess they all in a way link up. So I was saying to you that when you just said like, oh, where are you coming from? And I said, I'm here in Vietnam, and there's a story behind that as well. So one of my big obstacles, and it's shared by so many people. So right now I work with cycle breaker parents. This is, I do conscious parenting and supporting people through that. And it involves that element of healing and skills. So we need to, when we get to look after ourselves, how do I know this? I know this because I was raised in a house with an alcoholic dad. This is how I know what it takes to be a cycle breaker. And I have 3 children. They are 7, 5, and 3. And I knew actually, interestingly, years before I had my children. So my partner and I, my husband, we were together for like 12 years before we had kids. We got together very young, and I always knew I was going to do it differently. And now when I look back on it, so I'm 37 now, and when I look back on it, a lot of my early career, well, my whole career really, in different forms, has been working with children, early years, play schemes. I used to be a lifeguard and a swimming teacher with children, and teaching adults to swim is so hard. No credit to people who could do that. Children is great. And I volunteered in refugee camps when I lived in Damascus, like before the war, and all kinds of it, working with young offenders in the UK. And it all, when I really look back on it, and then I became a teacher, and then I had my family, and then I had a few years off. All of it in some ways is supporting other people healing. It's supporting other children and young people and their families through breaking cycles. So I think it's one of those things that you can know it in theory, you can read about it, but you really need to walk the walk. Not to say that a non-parent can't help parents, and not to say that somebody who hasn't had a tough upbringing, but I know that feeling. And I posted a reel the other day. I'm new to reels. They're, on Instagram, they're short videos. And it was something that I nearly didn't do because I thought it was too silly. And it was about how my dad, so I've got my hand here, like if that was like his legs. He used to like twitch his foot with his flip-flops. And if he did like a double twitch, we'd be out. Okay. Because we knew, and this is why I talk about polyvagal theory and polyvagal therapy and how to heal the nervous system. Because in our case, me and my sister, we learned hypervigilance because it made us safe. So then, in years and years time, and I'm like, I'm going to parent differently. I have a tattoo of oxytocin. Look at me. I'm parenting from love. And with all these great intentions. And then I was like, why am I shouting? I don't want to shout. I know what it's like to be that kid who's shouted at and who's scared, and I don't want that. And it was through doing all that research into why, we'd become, my sister and I both went through this journey separately, but together in a way of recalibrating so that we could find calm. It wasn't serving us anymore. So it's like that obstacle kept me safe. Growing up in that household kept me safe. in that my body did what it needed to do. So I was always alert, always on, always aware, always very quiet, always very, very tidy. And I'm not naturally a tidy person at all.
Wow.
And then, years later, I had to unpick that. Well, I got to unpick that so that I didn't then pass it on to my kids. And it's made me, I couldn't wish it away. I wish that my dad wasn't so troubled when he was a kid. I wish I didn't see the things that I saw, and I wish I didn't experience some of the things I experienced. And yet that career that I had, I helped so many families. And now, I'm privileged to be able to break the cycle in my family and others. So
I love it.
That thing, it helps you become who you are, doesn't it?
I love it. Now, tell me if I'm saying it right, because you corrected Laura, right?
Laura, yeah.
Laura. I have to remember the O, Laura. I know it's AU, but it's the way that I say it. I know. Okay, so Laura, how important was the inner child work for you in order to parent better and to break the cycle?
It was huge. It was huge. And it's interesting because, people, when they come to me, they always say the same thing that I said to myself early on. How do I make it stop? Yeah. How do I make them get their shoes on? How do I make them not have a meltdown at the park? How do I make this thing that I don't like stop? And the trouble is it doesn't really work like that, I'm afraid. And I know it because I had to live it too. That, like when they say one of my children actually is neurodivergent, we suspect that he's autistic. And we are going through the process right now. And when he was young, he's only 5 now, but when he was really young, he would just cry. He would just cry and cry and cry. Take him out the sling, he would cry, put him back in, fine. And it just was one of those things. And I was really conscious, especially because he was my second, so I'd already partly started the journey with number 1. I was really conscious that it was triggering me. I knew the noise was hurting me, and I couldn't work out why. And of course, as humans, incessant noise does set us off. It just does. We can only take so much, and then your cup runneth over. That's fine. Yes. But yeah. But it was also, so I actually got some earphones, and I would put them in whilst I had him in the sling whilst I was cooking. It was so funny. And then when I went deeper, so that's like an environmental trigger. And then when I went deeper to that emotional trigger, I realized my mom actually said this to me. She offered to babysit for my daughter, who was, I think, 3 at the time. And she said, oh no, we don't pick them up when they cry. Yes. And I was like, what? And she said, it didn't do anything wrong for your generation. That's what everybody did. And I said, look, Mom, and I think I was like, I don't know, 34 or something. And I was like, I'm not like a grown woman, and that hurts my feelings right now to know. And she was like, oh, well, I did my best. And she did do her best, and she did her best in an abusive household. And actually we weren't allowed to cry in our household. We had to be trained out of it very quickly because it might upset the possibly inebriated, inconsistent person. So I totally understand, and now I have worked with domestic abuse cases in my career place. I could totally see, actually she was keeping us safe by shutting us down. And so then when my son was like crying, and even now, they all 3 of them have big feelings, because they do. And sometimes, depending on my tiredness levels or, whatever, sometimes I'm like, this is too much, because I never had my needs met in that way. Yes. And through the inner child therapy that I did, I actually did a hypnotherapy session with a friend of mine, and we went through that mother wound and the not being picked up and the not being cared for, and just, if we started to have big feelings, it would be like, no. And actually it would be that fear, because my mom had fear, and so we'd be picking up on the fear, and we'd just be like, stuff it down. Yes. And again, that kept us safe. So was it adaptive? No. Was it helpful? In some ways, yes. But was it the best thing for us? No. And it helped us survive. And at some points, it was like that. And it, now we get to unpick that. So doing this hypnotherapy with my friend Aoife Griffin was so emotional. It was like just pouring with tears. Yes. And you'll know this, not all healing is tears and tears and tears. And sometimes you get a thing and the tap turns, it's like a tree with the sap, and it just keeps coming and coming. And I felt so much better. And I remember her saying, I might cry, hang on.
It's okay.
Well, it is emotional, and it's okay. It's okay to be emotional. But I remember her saying, you take that little 5-year-old, bring her to your house. She can live with you. And I was like, oh, she can. And I wasn't triggered anymore by my kid. Seriously. It's just amazing. And it shows you that it wasn't down to him. He's not broken. The other two are not broken. They're kids. And that our response to our kids is about us. That's why parenting is an active verb.
That is so true. And I always say that when you're reacting to something, especially if you haven't done inner child work, 90% of what you're reacting to has everything to do with the past. Everything to do with the past. So, and 10% has to do with present, but if you haven't done your inner child work and you're a parent, it's hard. And a lot of us, we definitely want to break the cycle, but what does that mean? You know what I mean? Especially when you're being triggered and you don't even know why you're being triggered. Yes.
Yeah, that's hard. I think a lot of people are really resistant to inner child work as well, especially when we come to the reparenting side. You know, when we give ourselves, so, you know, reparenting is in we literally give ourselves what we didn't get. So for me, that looks like, you know, like I just teared up and was like, I'm going to tear up. Fine. Whereas, you know, if I hadn't have done that inner child work, I wouldn't be able to allow myself to express the emotion. So for me, that was the reparenting. And also for me, having a, you know, a tough day or a tough week or, you know, whatever, I seek support. I will do the, you know, the things that we all know as the self-care, you know, I'll have a bath, or I'll, you know, go to my husband and I'll be like, will you stroke my hair? You know, or I'll go out with a friend or something. And that is the mothering that I didn't get. Does that mean that my mom is a terrible mom? No, she's a wonderful person, but she was not in a space where she could be the mom that she truly wanted to be, but she was the best mom for us to keep us safe. It was all about keeping safe, all about keeping safe. You know, that Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We were kind of at the bottom, and that's just where we were.
Yeah.
And I think people think the reparenting means that you're rejecting your parents or choosing different values as a conscious parent, a gentle parent, an empowering parent is disrespectful because it's rejecting. And to an element, there is an element of that. You know, I'm not going to put my kids on the naughty step, and that's what my mum did, and I've chosen not to do that. So I am in one way saying, I see what you're doing and I'm not. And, you know, and I'm just owning that that's just different. You know, there's more research out now. But also to say, I wish that somebody held me when I was a child and my mom wasn't able to, doesn't mean that I hate my mom, doesn't mean I don't love my mom. It just is you know what I mean? It's all about us. It's not about my, and she didn't need to know that I was, she still doesn't know that I did that session. She still doesn't know that I did the inner child and the reparenting. It's not really about her. It's not a judgment on her. It's not being horrible. It's a healing. You know, you can say, I know you did your best and thank you for keeping me safe. And my 7-year-old self needed a hug. And I get to give myself a hug now. And that's just beautiful. It's just a beautiful thing.
It is. It's absolutely beautiful. Now, one thing that I always say is that it is important to acknowledge the fact, in most cases, our parents did the very best that they could with what they had and what they knew at the time. It doesn't mean that it was the best for us, but they did the best that they could at the time. What would be your suggestion for someone that is struggling with their past, with their inner child? Would it be hypnotherapy? Would it be, you know, self-help books? Like, what exactly would be your advice?
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good question. It would be really, and it's a kind of a difficult one to answer because, you know, because we're all so different. So, you know, for me, you know, I was saying that hypnotherapy was so powerful for me. And, you know, I only did that last year because I happened to meet somebody that I really gelled with, but I'd done a lot of other stuff before that. And actually, when I think about it, so I must 36 or thereabout when I'd done that. But I've been doing inner child work on myself, and actually without realizing what it was called. And then when I realized what it was called, and now I teach it and I support others. But if I had done that when I was, you know, 27, it would have been a car crash. Like I just wouldn't have been, I was not able to access that. And it's so interesting. I spoke to somebody today who was saying, you know, a former client, I mean, you know, you always keep in touch with the clients, it's never like gone forever. And she'd said, you know, this something like 6 months later, and she said, I've got a counselor because I'm ready. Okay. And it just rose. She was like, it just rose. It rose like 2 days ago. And I sat my partner down and I talked to him about what happened to me when I was a child. And she said, I understand what you mean now. And I always used to say to her, when it rises, let it rise. We get to be quiet. We get to, so I'm a research person. This was, you know, my background is in education. I was an educational researcher, you know, I did my master's at this. I like reading papers. I have pictures on Instagram of me on the beach with a clipboard with a science paper, because this is how I roll. It's my thing. And yeah, I just love it. Other people aren't. So some people might want to read even a novel about it, especially if it's new and it's a bit scary. If you want to read a book about it, if you want to watch a podcast about it, if you want to do anything that starts you, and then when you're ready to do more, then you can do the Google search, you know, then you can get a book. And then either there's this amazing book that I've not finished, but I'm still going to recommend it, called The Book You Wish Your Parents Had Read. Ooh. And yeah, I know. And it's and I came, because I'm writing a book called The Cycle Breaker Parents Handbook, which is all about it. It's really embryonic stages, but I'm hoping to have it out by the end of the summer. And so it's going to be self-published, so I can just get it out there. And it's basically going to say the same thing, like when we're ready to read it, we're ready. And if you pick something up and you find it triggering and upsetting, put it down, because you don't owe anyone anything. This is your journey. And, you know, you might be able to look at somebody else. So like my sister, I guess, was probably further along than me at points because she had kids before me. You know, that thing that people say of like, heal your stuff before you have kids so you don't pass it on. I was like, I didn't know I had this stuff, or I didn't know it was so acute until I had kids, until I was the most exhausted I'd ever been, and I was holding a crying baby and thinking, I can't do this. It's, you know, you can't experience that until you, well, literally walk the walk. So give yourself some grace. That's it, isn't it? It's the compassion, that radical compassion of, if you want to take baby steps, take baby steps. And, you know, when I did my hypnotherapy session, I had probably done about 5 or 6 years of, you know, coaching, my training, reading, research. I do EFT. I'm an EFT practitioner. Oh, nice. So the EFT, I feel like the EFT loosened it for me, you know, like loosening the jar. But I still, on the day of my session, with somebody that I trust and love and care about, and I consider her a friend actually now as well, I was still nervous. You know, like it's never going to be easy peasy. And it actually is easier to stuff it down, isn't it? And be unconscious and repeat our cycles. So if you're waiting, it's kind of that thing, isn't it? When you're ready, it will rise. The feeling will rise in you, and you still probably will be a bit nervous. You still may read stuff and have to put it down and have a cry or go for a walk or do some deep breaths. And that's, yeah, just love yourself like you would if it was somebody else.
Oh, I love that. I absolutely love that, Laura. And one key thing that I take away from that is that you have to be ready and not to push yourself. If you're not ready, it's not going to be easy to delve into those feelings. So yeah, absolutely.
And sometimes we want to be ready. I mean, I remember myself being like, I just want to be fixed. I just want to be healed. I want to stop feeling like this. And then, you know, the further on you go down that path, you realize, this is a lifelong commitment.
Yes, exactly.
And we get to it, like, there's never a cha-ching moment. No one's going to give you a medal. Same as parenting, isn't it? No one's going to give you an award at the end of the day. Yes. When your child has a meltdown and you support them and you sit with them and you hold space for them, and you know, so that you just say your feelings are welcome, your feelings are okay, and then they come into your lap, you feel great. But then, you know, the next one's going to, this happened to me literally, that exactly that situation, I was like, oh, that was beautiful. And then through the apartment I had, I'm ready to whack my bum now. I was like, oh, seriously, no one's going to give you an award. There's no fanfare. We just do the best we can. And also, like, some days, this is really important, some days the best that you can do is not very much. some days the best that you can do is catching yourself when you're mid-rant and going, I don't want to rant at you kids. I'm really sorry. I'm so tired. I'm going to go over here for a bit and then let's try again. And other days, your best is, I'm holding space for you. I'm the conscious parent, you know, and it's great because there's so many variables. So, you know, you might be ready one day to delve in and go deep, and then it might wobble you for a few days. That's fine. That's fine.
I love it. I love it. So you're overseas, right? Can you tell us a little bit about how your journey?
It's a really weird journey.
Can't wait to hear about this, Laura.
It's yeah, so we were, you know, at one point we were a 2-teacher family. And so husband was teaching in secondary school, I was teaching in primary school, and then we had kids, and I obviously stopped teaching. Well, not obviously, but I chose to stop teaching. I had three kids in 3 years. Oh, yeah. So it was like, you know, we've been together for 12 years. We're like, I think we're ready to have a family. And then they just like came. Mm-hmm. And so it was just impossible for me to go back to the classroom. And actually at that point, I think I was ready to leave education anyway. Like my heart wasn't in it. I could see. And we had already talked when I was pregnant and I was still teaching, and I was doing my master's in education, and I was like, John, I think I want to change the system, and I don't know if, you know, we had decided that we were going to home educate our kids already, so to go back to the classroom didn't really make any sense. So we ended up in this position where we had traveled a lot before we had kids. We'd had these, you know, I'd lived in Damascus, he'd gone like all the way through Eastern Europe with his friends backpacking, and then we basically went job, married, house, babies in like 5 years. Wow. Like all of that in one go. And then, you know, 5 years on, and we were still in that place. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I can't do it. I just, and that kind of coincided actually interestingly with everything you've been talking about, the inner child healing, with the healing and me becoming a bit more conscious. And that was when I remember saying to John, I think I became a teacher to please my mom. Because because we were drilled into us, because of how we'd grown up, into us was drilled, be reliant upon yourself, have your own bank account, have a getaway fund, rely upon nobody, you know, don't, you know, I don't care if you want, because my degree is in Arabic. And my mom, why not? And even as me, I literally flipped a coin when I was 18 between Arabic and Japanese and ended up in the desert. And my mom was like, I think she loves it. She does love it. And I'm kind of known for being the weird one. But also she was like, where's the security? And she still says this now, where's the security? And then so I had gone, and I love children, I love educational theory, I love psychology, and then I was like, I'll be a teacher. That's, you know, it ticks all the boxes. And then, you know, after years, and then when I was doing all this healing, I was like, I loved my time. It's like the thing, and I'm really happy, and it did make me who I am right now. Mm-hmm. And I realized through the healing that I wasn't being authentic. I wasn't being me. Mm-hmm. And there was a point in 2019, I remember it's October half term, the first week back. So John had gone back after, or like I don't know what you guys call it, you know, the break. And so John was going back to school. And I just had a moment where I was like, I think I stopped. So it was like 3 days where I didn't get out of bed. I didn't move. I was still breastfeeding the baby, and he brought me the baby, and I would feed the baby, and he would take the baby away. And he was like, what's happening? And I was like, because I had this realization of, this is it for 20 years, at least, or we change. And I didn't know what to do. And some bit of me was just like, I don't know how to describe it. And well, you know, looking back on it, it was the rock bottom that we needed. And then through that, we were forced into this real conversation, because we were teenagers when we met. Like, we didn't have to communicate on a deep level as teenagers. We just be like, do you want to go to the park? Yeah. Do you want to go to the London? Hey, yeah, okay. And then, you know, and then we found ourselves with this magical whole family, and we were blessed, and we were privileged, and we were loving it. And it was just hollow. And other people love it, and it just wasn't for us, I guess. And we had this conversation. He sat down and said, I was too afraid to tell you in case you felt like I was getting at you, but I don't want to work full time. I want to be a dad with my kids. And I was like, we can't afford it, because we couldn't afford it. My salary was so low because I'd taken time out. And in the end, we just decided, you'll love this. We decided, let's just do something crazy and live abroad. And then he picked it, then his phone binged, and he looked at his phone and he said, there is my exact job that I do now, but one step down, so not in management as a normal teacher. It's in Vietnam.
That's the universe.
And he applied and he got it. And we were like,
wow.
And so that's what we did. It was a 2-year contract, and we could have extended it, but we've decided we're going to go somewhere else now. And he just looked at his phone and he was like, there's a biology teacher with all of my, and it even said you have to have had a research background, which he has. And he was like, this is my job.
I love it.
Have you ever been to Vietnam? No. Get me a map. Where is it? And then he got the job, and then COVID happened, and we just decided to do it anyway. So we figured we'd have to be somewhere in the world when there was COVID. So why not?
I absolutely love that. And I love how brave you all were to say, we're doing this. This isn't going to be this isn't it. This isn't going to be my life for the next 20, 30 years. I'm going to make a change. Yeah. I love it. And it was how was your family? I know that they were
oh my God, they were crazy. They were like, literally. Here's the thing, it was much easier when I was like 20 and you didn't have like video phones. And my mom was just like, I think the words didn't even go in. And but it's funny because she's really happy for us. Nice. But also was a bit like, but the security. And I was like, Mom, that's your own trigger. And she was like, I know. And actually, that's another interesting point, that without me kind of lecturing her and stuff about, you need to do inner child healing, my work on me has rippled. And my sister's work has rippled. And, you'll see that through your clients. They make a change and they're like, oh, my partner is behaving differently towards me. And my children, we don't argue so much. It's just so powerful. And John's dad and like mom and dad basically got like pom-poms, and they were like,
oh, that's so nice. What would be your advice to someone that is, because it sounds like you were experiencing burnout when you figured that it was going to be 20 years of this. You were like, there's no way I can get out of the bed and face this. Like, I need to do something, but I just don't know what to do. What would be your advice to a woman that's there right now, that's like, they don't want to work like 9 to 5, 5 days a week for the rest of their lives, and maybe America or wherever?
Talk.
Yes.
Talk. Because the minute that I talked, my husband started talking. And the minute we started talking and also listening to each other, we realized actually we were both on the same page, but we weren't telling each other. So we were both, I kind of just, when I look back, I kind of want to like shake us, but also give us a hug and be like, dude, just talk. And now we talk about everything. And it actually was great. It was, one of those awful experiences that changed everything for the better in a way. And talk to somebody, and also have that compassion for yourself. And imagine, I do this to myself, and because I'm still learning this, and I always recommend it with everybody, imagine that you're talking to another person, because I was so harsh on myself, but I had 3 babies in nappy. I had been breastfeeding for 6 years because they came one after the other, and we had no family, no childcare, no support, and I was doing all of it on my own, and he was working really long days with a 45-minute commute there and back. And when I look back on that, I think, of course it was really hard. Of course my house was a mess, but I was so mean to myself in a way that I was the one at baby group hugging everybody else. Like going like, oh honey, I know it's really hard, you get through this, it's just a season, and can I do your dishwasher, when I was drowning myself. And actually what I needed to do and could have done, and I wish I had, and now I know I can, we get older and wiser. So I wish if I had spoken and I had said, to John like a year before, I'm really struggling, I'm finding this hard. And we can start with, I'm feeling and I'm finding this. And that's not getting on at him, and because I was so worried that he was going to be upset that I was saying, you don't earn enough, that I was going to be undercutting him. And actually it's not the case. You have the right and the opportunity and the ability to just express yourself and say, right now I feel this is hard, I feel lonely, I feel this, and then this is where, and actually just know that you can make change.
I love
you can make
it.
huge change.
I love it. So Laura, where can we find you online?
Yes. So I have a Facebook group which is called Cycle Breaker Parents Unite, which is all of us all together. It's a really, really cool place. And sometimes we just talk about, normal stuff, and sometimes we go a bit deeper, and that's so great because everyone's ready at different times, isn't it? And I also actually have, my website is cyclebreakerparents.com. And if you go to that and put in /free course, so cyclebreakerparents.com/free course, there's a free course.
Nice.
Because, like you said, everybody is at different places at different times. Sometimes we don't want to jump in. Sometimes we just want to, test the water. And so that's what that's there for.
Okay, very nice. Very nice. What would be your biggest takeaway that you would like to tell women or men who might be watching this? What would be your biggest takeaway advice for them?
Oh, in a nutshell. Really, it's, you have a right to feel how you feel and to share that. And when we do, that's when magic starts to happen, because when we voice it, change starts to happen. So you have a right to feel how you feel, even if you've been told in your past, in your childhood, in your previous relationships that you don't. You do. Here's our permission from us too. You have permission to feel how you feel and to express it.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Laura, I could talk to you for hours. You have to come back onto the show so that we could talk again. I absolutely love this interview. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It's so lovely to meet you. I've been following you from afar, and I'm a bit like, ooh, girl.
I love it.